Take your hands off her, son. Now. Minjun's voice cracked through the room like a blade dragged across glass. He was still in that wheelchair. He hadn't stood in 6 months. But when he said it, 3 grown men in black suits froze like they'd seen a ghost rise from the dead. Amara stood behind him, shaking, her son pulled tight against her chest, and for the first time since she'd walked into that mansion, she understood exactly who she was dealing with. This wasn't a broken man. This was a king waiting to remember his own throne. And in 12 hours, everything she thought she knew about him, his family, his money, the death of her husband, was about to blow up in her face. But let's back up. Because to understand how a single mother from Lagos ended up standing in the middle of a Korean mafia war, you have to go back to the night nobody came to his birthday. Welcome to Afro Meets Seoul Stories. On today's episode, you'd get a dose of unexpected encounters and beautiful beginnings. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification icon to get a reminder when new amazing stories drop, and send this story to friends and family who you think would love to watch it. And also, tell me in the comments which city and country you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now let's dive back into this amazing story. Amara Johnson didn't come to Seoul to fall in love. She came to survive. 2 years earlier, her husband had died in what the papers called an unfortunate accident. She never believed that word. Unfortunate. Like it was bad luck. Like it wasn't planned. She buried him with that word stuck in her throat, and she carried her son onto a plane to South Korea with nothing but a suitcase, a nursing certificate, and a promise she made at his grave. She would find out the truth. No matter how long it took. She took jobs nobody else wanted. Night shifts. Home care for the elderly, the difficult, the dying. She learned Korean phrase by phrase, scrubbing floors with one hand and flipping through flashcards with the other. Her son, Kaode, was 7 now. Smart. Too smart. He asked questions she couldn't answer yet. Mommy, why did Daddy have to go? She always changed the subject. On the night everything changed, she'd just been fired. Wrongfully. A patient's family accused her of theft. A lie, and she knew exactly which nurse had planted it, jealous of how the old woman adored her. But no one listened to the black woman with the accent. They never did. She was standing at a bus stop at midnight, counting coins in her palm, wondering how she'd pay Kaode's school fees when her phone rang. An agency she barely remembered registering with. "We have an urgent placement," the woman on the phone said. "Private care. Very difficult client. Pays triple the normal rate." Amara almost laughed. Difficult didn't scare her. Broke did. "I'll take it." She didn't ask who. She didn't ask why the pay was so high for one client. She just said yes because yes was the only word she had left. The car that picked her up the next morning was black, silent, and far too expensive for a home care job. It drove through gates that looked like they belonged to a palace, not a house. The mansion sat on a hill overlooking Seoul, all glass and stone, cold and enormous, like something built to keep people out rather than welcome them in. Inside, the staff moved like ghosts. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke above a whisper. "He doesn't like noise," the housekeeper warned her. "He doesn't like questions. He doesn't like people, period. You'll understand why nobody stays." Amara nodded, but nothing prepared her for the man in the wheelchair by the window. Kang Minjun. Even broken, even silent, even staring out at a city he apparently used to own, there was something in his face that made her chest tighten. He looked like a man who used to be feared. Now he just looked tired. Furious. Alone. "I don't need a babysitter," he said without turning around. His voice was low. Controlled. Dangerous in a quiet way. "Good," Amara said. "Because I'm not one." He turned then. Fully. And looked at her the way men look at things they don't expect to survive an encounter with. "Excuse me." "I said I'm not a babysitter," she repeated, setting her bag down. "I'm here to do a job. If you want to sit by that window feeling sorry for yourself, that's your business. But I get paid either way." Silence. Thick. Dangerous. Then, barely, almost invisible, the corner of his mouth twitched. Nobody had spoken to him like that in 6 months. Nobody had spoken to him like that in years. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just done something no bodyguard, no doctor, no family member had managed to do since the assassination attempt that put him in that chair. She'd made Kang Minjun feel something other than rage. And somewhere in the city, a man in a different mansion, his father, was about to make a decision that would tear both their worlds apart. 3 weeks passed and something inside that mansion started to shift. At first, Minjun barely tolerated her. He barked orders. He tested her patience on purpose, spilling water so she'd have to clean it, refusing meals just to watch her get frustrated. But Amara never flinched. She never begged him to be nice. She simply did her job, spoke her mind, and left him alone when he needed silence. And slowly that drove him crazy in a way he didn't expect. "You're not scared of me," he said one evening, watching her set his medication tray down with more force than necessary. "Should I be? Everyone else is." Amara shrugged. "I buried my husband. I've survived worse than a rich man in a bad mood." That stopped him. He studied her face for a long moment, like he was trying to read a language he didn't understand yet. She didn't explain further and he didn't ask. But something passed between them, recognition maybe. Two people who'd both lost something and refused to show it. His birthday came on a Thursday. Amara found out by accident. A calendar note in the kitchen, nothing more. No mention from staff. No preparations. No calls. She asked the housekeeper if anyone was coming. The woman's face went carefully blank. No one comes for his birthday. Not anymore. Amara felt something twist in her chest. She thought of her own son's birthdays, how she'd move heaven and earth to make sure Kaod never felt forgotten. She thought about what it must feel like to have more money than a small country and still spend your birthday completely alone. So she did something reckless. He baked a cake. A simple one, lopsided, with too much frosting because she wasn't used to Korean ovens. She lit a single candle and carried it into his study that night, where he sat exactly where he always sat, by the window staring at a city that used to bow to him. "What is this?" he said flatly, not a question. "It's your birthday. Somebody should make a fuss." "I don't want a fuss." "Too bad. Blow out the candle." He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Nobody spoke to him this way. Nobody had in years. But there was something in her eyes, stubborn, warm, unwilling to let him disappear into his own bitterness, that made the anger in his chest quiet down for the first time since the shooting. He blew out the candle. And for 1 second, just one, Kang Minjun smiled. It undid something in both of them. After that night, things changed faster. He let her push him through physical therapy exercises he'd refused for months. He started eating full meals again. He even laughed once, a short, rusty sound like he'd forgotten how. Amara found herself looking forward to their evenings, their sharp back-and-forth conversations, the way his eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking. But one night, everything shifted. She was straightening the bookshelves in his study when she saw it. A framed photograph half hidden behind a stack of files. An older man in an expensive suit, shaking hands with a group of businessmen at what looked like a shipping company. Amara's whole body went cold. She knew that face. She'd seen it in newspaper clippings she kept hidden in a box under her bed. The same company logo stitched onto documents from her husband's accident report. The same man who'd signed off on the safety compliance that had failed the night her husband died on that cargo dock. Kang Minjun's father. Her hands started shaking. She set the photo down too hard and it clattered against the shelf. "Everything okay?" Minjun's voice came from the doorway. He'd rolled in without her hearing him, watching her with the sharp, unreadable expression of a man who noticed everything. "Fine," she said too quickly. "Just clumsy." He looked at her a moment longer than necessary. Something about the way her voice shook didn't match the word fine. But he let it go for now. That night, Amara sat on the edge of her bed in the staff quarters, staring at her phone at old photos of her husband smiling, unaware of what was coming for him. She'd taken this job to survive. She never expected to feel something real for the son of the man she believed destroyed her family. And now she had a choice to make. Keep pretending. Or find out the truth, even if it meant losing the only warmth she'd felt in 2 years. What will happen next? Amara is about to make a decision that could either expose everything, or destroy the fragile trust she's built with a man who's finally starting to heal. If you're feeling the tension right now, that's exactly what we want. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment telling me what you think Amara should do. Should she confront him? Or keep digging in silence? Now let's get back into it. Hit 3. Amara didn't sleep that night. She lay staring at the ceiling of her small staff room, her husband's face flashing behind her eyes every time she closed them. He thought about the photograph. The company logo. The signature on that safety report she'd read 100 times, looking for someone to blame. Kong Corporation. She'd never made the connection before. Minjun's last name was Kong, but so were 500,000 people in Korea. She never imagined the man she was falling for, because yes, by now she couldn't lie to herself anymore. She was falling, could be connected to the one thing that broke her whole world apart. By morning she'd made a decision. She wouldn't confront him yet. Not until she knew for certain. So she started searching. She waited until he was asleep, until the mansion went quiet, and she slipped into his study. Her hands trembled as she opened drawers she had no business opening. She told herself it was for her son. For her husband's memory. For the truth she'd promised at his grave. She found a folder. Shipping records. Safety audits. The same terminal, the same date as her husband's accident. Her heart pounded so loud she almost didn't hear the wheels behind her. What are you doing? Minjun's voice cut through the dark room like ice water. Amara spun around, the folder still in her hands, and for a moment neither of them said anything. His eyes moved from her face to the papers, and something in his expression shifted. Confusion, then dawning realization, then something that looked dangerously close to betrayal. Amara. His voice was low, controlled. But underneath it something cracked. What is this? I can explain. Then explain. He rolled closer, his jaw tight. Because right now it looks like the woman I trusted with my life has been going through my family's private files behind my back. Her chest hurt so bad she thought she might break in half right there. This was it. The moment she'd been avoiding for weeks. There was no more hiding. My husband died 2 years ago, she said, her voice shaking but steady. On a cargo terminal owned by Kong Corporation. They called it an accident. A malfunction. But the safety report was falsified. I know it was, I've read it 100 times. And the man who signed off on it was my father. Minjun's voice was quiet. Flat. Like something inside him had just gone very, very cold. Amara nodded, tears burning in her eyes. I didn't know when I took this job. I swear to you I didn't know. But then I saw that photo and She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. I needed to know the truth. The silence between them stretched so long she thought she might collapse under the weight of it. Get out, he finally said. Minjun. Get out. His voice cracked like thunder, echoing off the walls, and Amara felt her whole body flinch. She'd never heard him shout. Not once. Not even in his darkest, angriest moments. She left the room with the folder still clutched to her chest, tears streaming down her face, her heart shattering with every step down that long, cold hallway. She didn't sleep. She packed her things, sat on the edge of her bed, and waited for someone to come tell her she was fired, that a car would take her away in the morning, that this strange, impossible chapter of her life was over before it ever really began. But morning came and no one came for her. Instead there was a knock on her door. Minjun sat in the hallway, alone, his face pale, his eyes red like he hadn't slept either. I need to know everything, he said quietly. Not because I don't believe you. But as I think my father has been lying to me about a lot of things. And I think you might be the only person brave enough to tell me the truth. Amara's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't the reaction she expected. This wasn't rage or denial, or the cold dismissal of a powerful man protecting his family's name. This was a son beginning to see his father clearly for the first time, and it terrified him. What neither of them knew yet was that Minjun's father was already watching. Already aware that a home aide with a dead husband and a dangerous folder of documents had gotten far too close to his paralyzed son. And men like him didn't wait around for problems to solve themselves. By nightfall a car would be sent. Not for Amara. For her son. If your heart is racing right now, that's exactly where we want you. Because this is the moment everything changes. Before we go further, I need you in the comments. Do you think Minjun will choose the truth even if it destroys his own family? Smash that like button, hit subscribe if this story has you hooked, and share this with someone who needs a good cry today. Now let's find out what happens to Amara's son. Amara was in the kitchen when her phone rang. Kode's school number. Mrs. Johnson? The voice on the other end was tight, controlled panic barely hidden underneath. Your son didn't get on the bus. A man said he was sent by you. Kode went with him. The world tilted sideways. What man? What man? Amara's voice tore out of her, and she was already running, already grabbing her coat, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. He had identification. He said family emergency. She didn't hear the rest. She was already in the hallway, screaming for anyone, for help, for someone, and Minjun rolled out of his study so fast the wheels nearly caught on the doorframe. What happened? They took him. Her voice broke into pieces. They took my son, Minjun. Somebody took my son. He didn't ask who. He already knew. His face changed in front of her. The confusion, the grief from the night before, all of it burned away in an instant, replaced by something ancient and terrifying. This was the man staff whispered about. The man who used to make grown criminals go quiet with one look. 6 months in a wheelchair hadn't erased that. Ed just put it to sleep. Get me my phone, he said, voice deadly calm. Now. Within minutes he had half his old network activated. Men who still respected the Kong name even after his fall. Favors called in, eyes on every terminal and airstrip his father's company controlled. Amara paced the study, sobbing, praying in a language she hadn't spoken since her mother died, begging a god she wasn't sure was still listening. He's fine, Minjun said, gripping her hand so tight it almost hurt. Do you hear me? Nobody touches a child. Not on my watch. Not while I still have breath in my body. You can't even stand, she whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them, raw with terror, not cruelty. Something flickered across his face. Not anger. Determination. Watch me. The call came an hour later. Not from kidnappers. From his father. Come to the house, son, the old man said, voice smooth as silk over the speaker. Bring your little nurse. Let's discuss this like a family. The drive to the Kong family estate felt like the longest of Amara's life. She sat beside Minjun in the back of the car, his hand never leaving hers, his jaw locked so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. They found Kaode sitting in a grand marble foyer, untouched, unharmed, playing with an expensive toy car someone had clearly given him to keep him calm. Amara nearly collapsed with relief, pulling him into her arms so hard he yelped. Mommy, why is everyone so serious? He asked, and she just held him tighter, unable to speak. Minjun's father stood at the top of the staircase, watching the whole scene with the calm satisfaction of a man who believed he'd already won. You see how easy that was, the old man said. One phone call. One child. Imagine what I could do to the company records, the reporters, the entire narrative around your accident if you don't drop this foolish investigation. Minjun's hands gripped the wheels of his chair so hard his knuckles went white. You used a child, he said, voice shaking with fury. Why child? The woman He stopped himself, but everyone in that room heard what he almost said. His father's eyes narrowed. The woman you what, Minjun? A single mother with nothing? A foreigner? You'd throw away everything we've built for her. You falsified a safety report and got a man killed, Minjun said, and his voice was rising now, cracking with an emotion that had been buried for years. Not just grief for Amara's husband, but grief for a father he never truly had. You let an innocent man die to save money on repairs. And when I found out, you were going to let me believe it was an accident forever. It doesn't matter what you believe, his father said coldly. It matters what you can prove. And you can prove nothing. Something shifted in Minjun's face. A decision, final and unshakable. I don't need to prove it in court, father. His voice went dangerously quiet. I just need the right people to know you're willing to kidnap a 7-year-old to protect yourself. And trust me. They will know by morning. The old man's smug expression finally cracked. Amara, still holding her son, watched the two most powerful men in her life stare each other down. One from a wheelchair, one from the top of a staircase, and realized that everything was about to change one way or another. What comes next determines everything. Who wins this war of blood and power, and whether love survives it. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, don't scroll away. Like this video, subscribe for more Afro-Korean love stories, and tell me in the comments. Do you think Minjun's father will back down, or is this about to get a lot more dangerous? Let's finish this story. Nobody moved for a long moment. The air in that marble foyer felt thick enough to choke on. Then Minjun's father laughed. Low, humorless, the laugh of a man who still believed he held every card. You'll destroy your own family name to protect a woman you've known for a few weeks? I'm not protecting her. Minjun rolled forward, closer to the staircase, closer to the man who raised him with fear instead of love. I'm protecting the truth. Something you buried the moment you let a man die for a repair bill. Amara stood frozen, KO'd small hand gripped tight in hers, watching a man she loved risk everything. His name, his empire, his safety, for a truth that wasn't even his to carry. That's when it happened. Slowly, gripping the marble railing with both hands, Minjun pushed himself up from the wheelchair. His legs shook. Sweat broke across his forehead. The doctors had said it would take months, maybe years, if it ever happened at all. But rage and love have a way of rewriting what's medically possible, and inch by inch Kang Minjun stood. He didn't walk far. He didn't need to. He just needed his father to see him standing, unafraid, for the first time since the assassination attempt that was supposed to end him for good. You didn't just fail me as a father, Minjun said, voice shaking but steady. You failed everyone who trusted this family's name. That ends today. The old man's face went pale. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected any of this. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Leaked documents, falsified reports, a kidnapping attempt caught on private security footage that Minjun's own men had quietly gathered as insurance. The Kang family name, once untouchable, cracked wide open. His father was arrested within the week. The empire seized and restructured under new leadership. Minjun's leadership, built not on fear this time but on something steadier. Mar stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go. She had options now. An official statement clearing her husband's name, a settlement that changed her and KO'd's life forever, a truth she'd chased for 2 years finally laid bare. She stayed because somewhere between a lopsided birthday cake and a foyer full of danger, she'd fallen in love with a man the whole world had given up on. 6 months later, on his birthday, the mansion wasn't empty anymore. Staff filled the halls. Real friends, the ones who'd stayed loyal through his darkest year, filled the dining room with laughter. KO'd ran around in a little suit, insisting he was the best man, for reasons only a 7-year-old could explain with total confidence. Anne Minjun stood, really stood, cane in hand, still healing but no longer hiding, at the head of the table, watching the woman who refused to let him disappear laugh with his employees like she'd always belonged there. But she had. Make a wish, Amara said, sliding a new cake in front of him, this one professionally made, no lopsided frosting this time. I don't need to, he said, pulling her down into the seat beside him, his hand finding hers under the table the way it had every day since that terrifying afternoon in his father's foyer. Everything I wished for is already sitting right here. She kissed him in front of everyone, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, Kang Minjun didn't feel like a broken man surrounded by ghosts. He felt like a man who'd finally come home. Love doesn't always arrive wrapped in comfort. Sometimes it walks in wearing grief, carrying secrets, standing on the other side of a truth that could destroy everything, and stays anyway. Amara didn't come to Seoul looking for love. She came looking for answers. But somewhere along the way she found both, and proved that even the coldest empire can be rebuilt on something as simple as a birthday cake and the courage to tell the truth. So let me ask you, if you were in Amara's position, could you have loved a man connected to your husband's death, even after finding out the truth? And do you think Minjun's father deserved everything that happened to him, or did he simply become a product of the ruthless world he built? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and I love seeing how differently this story hits each of you. If this story moved you, made you cry, or kept you glued to your screen from start to finish, that's exactly what we live for here at Afro Meets Seoul Stories. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story, and share this one with someone who needs a little reminder that love can survive even the darkest storms. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story.